Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and today, as you saw in the video title, we're going to be talking about submarines, an update on submarines, but also what you're seeing here in a screenshot that one of my clanmates took during the submarine battles mode testing. So the information news, we're going to start off first, giving an update on submarines and World Warships and how they're progressing. Now, know what I have to share. This does not officially come from Wargaming. It just comes from a source who is aware and knows of the progress of submarines and World of Warships. And then secondly, I'm going to discuss positives and some concerns and negatives. So let's just start off with the update part, because I've seen a lot of players begin to post more lately in different groups, asking, hey, what's going on with submarines? It's been a while since we've tested them out. What's the skinny? What's going on? So, I guess the main question that kind of comes up with that is, hey, is submarines going to be implemented? And this is where also the source comes into play here. And that it is definitely Wargaming's intention to implement submarines at some point. They're dead set on making it happen. Personally, I think that the timeline is later than what Wargaming had hoped for, as I wouldn't be surprised if their original goal was to introduce submarines in 0.10.0 and introducing them to the live servers, because you can see how the commander rework, that was one of the main reasons for the commander rework, was with submarines in mind. Because if you look at any of your commanders, and you look at, when you scroll to look at their different mastered skills for different ship types, you'll also see the submarine icon there, right? Because pre-commander rework, none of the skills actually really could work well for a submarine commander, right? You'd need some different skills, otherwise, only certain ones would work. Maybe less than 20% or something. I don't know. Maybe it's even less than that. So I think it was Wargaming's intention with the big 0.10.0 rollout was to introduce submarines live at this point, but they've had to go through a lot more testing than I think they originally were planning on doing so. And to me, that is also a good sign that they are actually taking that additional time with the submarines. Now, the source also says the testers, I don't know if it's majority of testers, minority of testers, but the way it's worded, it comes across as the majority of testers, are pretty frustrated with the process. Basically, it's a merry-go-round right now. Testers point out some the problems, Wargaming attempts to fix them, or some of them, and in the process, they create new problems, and so it's just back and forth repeatedly between Wargaming and the testers. And the testers have been doing this for a while, from my understanding, and so that is leading to the frustration I think that the testers are going through. I'm just reading into that, not entirely sure. It's likely, according to the source, that they will do another round of public testing this spring or summer to gauge the public reaction, and it's probably at this point they will just stamp it for approval, put submarines into the game, regardless of where they stand, perhaps in terms of balanced or being structured. Because Wargaming has invested a lot of time and resources into submarines, and at some point it needs to start bearing fruit, right? It needs to start producing profit. They're probably going to do premium submarines that you can buy in the armory, in a premium shop, so on and so forth. But it's at some point that I think Wargaming, they're going to go for it. They're going to do it. As the source further states, this is specifically comes from them, they do not fit in the framework of the game design. Wargaming introducing submarines was one of the main reasons for the commander rework, since none of the pre-0.10.0 skills were designed with submarine commanders in mind. That little part comes from me. And as we talked about that in the beginning, and how that you can see that a submarine commander icon is now visible when you look at your commanders for different ship types. So that's where we stand with submarines. Now, I tested the submarines in the public test server. I messed around with them for a little bit. And then also when they put them on the main server in the game mode submarine battles. And personally, myself, I don't care too much for submarines, and I'm going to try to present a non-biased opinion as possible. But I'm going to be throwing in some of my thoughts. But I'm not trying to be biased about it and go to one extreme or the other, saying submarines are the greatest thing that ever happened, or submarines are the worst things to ever happen. So trying to go to give a level-headed response. But I did play around with submarines. The way that they were was, I mean, it would take you a little bit to set up your target, which, I mean, that's also historically accurate. You know, getting a submarine into position to take on enemy ships, line up torpedoes. It is nice that, you know, some of the submarines, or I don't know if all of them did, but some of them, you know, you could fire from the rear as well. That's pretty nice. But I didn't care too much for submarines. I prefer the surface ships overall. And then I also tested, when the tier 6. So I took Leander out in the submarine battle mode, and then tested, interaction of combating against submarines. And a lot of players were still getting used to it. And so basically, they were unsure of how to fully operate it. But in the Lander, I would just kind of roll up on them, slow down, kind of put it in park, and then just, drop the depth charges and kill them. That was pretty fun. I enjoyed killing submarines much more than playing them at that point in time. So let's talk about some positives, I think, here with submarines in World of Warships. Yeah. One of the positives I would say is that it's something new for the game. And that can also be viewed as a negative. World of Warships, this game started out with not having submarines. It didn't start with having aircraft carriers. But it didn't start with submarines, and now they're looking to introduce it. And, that could be something positive for the game if they do it well. That is the condition there when I say that. It's something positive, it's something new for the game, but that positive thing is conditional depending upon how Wargaming goes about it and how they implement it. And I have some ideas for that. The second thing I would say is it appeals to the part of the player base who loves submarines. I know it's not a majority of the player base. I think it's more of a minority that really were intrigued by the submarines. Kind of like how you have the minority of players that are intrigued with ops, and I plan on doing a different video later talking more about ops as they are right now. But it'll appeal to them because they have submariners who are really interested, and they want to play submarines because whether it's they served in the Navy, being a part of a submarine crew, so on and so forth. But it's going to appeal to that part of the player base. So that's a positive thing. The third thing, this is kind of something I'm throwing in there, but I think would be immensely great and positive, is if Wargaming implemented different type of submarine scenarios in ops, right? So basically Wargaming starting off with maybe they introduce one or two more ops that are focused specifically around submarines. So it could be you as a submarine player have to sneak into a base and you have to destroy a target or two undetected, and then also get out undetected. You can do that depending on the stars, so on and so forth. But I think that would be really cool, and that would pique my interest to play submarines more if it was in that type of game mode and ops. And there's different ideas, things that you could do with submarines and ops that you can't do with them in something, like random, like co-op, so on and so forth. But I think submarines, a couple of scenario operation tasks of submarines and ops would be really cool. That'd definitely be something I'd be willing to try. So that's more of a suggestion. So if you give feedback to Wargaming, or someone from Wargaming is watching this, dude, go for it. I think it'd be really cool. And then let's go into some concerns and negatives I had, because you guys heard me reference co-op and random battles. That's kind of not the place for submarines, but I'll get to that in just a moment. When we had the testing on the live server, one of the negatives, and I don't know if, well, yeah, Submarines, again, new, so players are testing them out, but one of the negatives is that if your team, like in Submarine battles, took out all the surface enemy ships and there's just one enemy submarine player left, they would basically just run and hide, right? And because they're underwater, they're much harder to find than, say, a surface ship player that goes and takes off towards the corner of the map. Eventually, at some point, you're going to detect them. Or a submarine player, you know, if he hasn't been detected the last 6 minutes of the map, you're like, the match, you're just like, okay, I have no idea where he is. And that drags out the game instead of it being like a, you know, 10-15 minute match. It turns into a full 20-minute match, and the last 7 minutes are uneventful because you can't find the submarine player. So it'll be interesting to see if that will still be a thing when we do see submarines again in World of Warships, because we know players do that. I mean, I was playing co-op battle the other day, and there was a human player on my team. He didn't get any kills, and we were just going to kill the CV, enemy bot CV. And because he didn't get any kills, he decided to kill the human Bismarck player next to him because he at least wanted one kill, and his reasoning is that Bismarck player didn't have enough health and would have been useless. So those are the type of things that you see in World of Warships, right? I don't have to tell you guys that. You see the potato, you see the derp, you see players just flat out refusing, they give themselves up to die, so on and so forth. Secondly, this was a concern that was first brought up by, I think, other community contributors, but I still share with them in that concern how it will affect destroyer players on the front lines. Not only do they have to worry about surface ships and planes, you know, now they're also going to worry about underwater, the submarines. Now, this can be viewed as a positive or a negative thing. So if you have a destroyer player who wants to take on that challenge, great. But you're going to have destroyer players in, you know, as an example, and I'll get to this in a minute, random and co-op battles who are not going to want to deal with that. They only want to focus on other surface ships and have to worry about carriers if there is a bot carrier that spawns into the game. And I think that both of the first two concerns, submarine players hiding till the match ends, how destroyers are going to interact, that can be solved with how Wargaming presented this, and that was in submarine battles. And when I say this is my third point, is to keep submarines in their own battle type. So when you had submarine battles, the only place, when that testing was live, the only place you'd find submarines in the game was in submarine battles. You wouldn't find submarines in ranked, you wouldn't find them in randoms, you wouldn't find them in co-op, or none of the existing ops, right? And I thought that was great that they actually decided to introduce it into a new battle game mode. But I think maybe they also partly did that to help them test and quantify like the data of how players were interacting with submarines, so on and so forth. But I think it's great to keep submarines as its own battle type. The major concern I have, the major one I have with submarines right now, is if Wargaming decides to introduce submarines into random battles, co-op, or ranked, or even clan battles for that matter. That is the biggest concern I have, and I say that because I think a lot of players will not like if Wargaming does that. Because I know for certain if I start playing random battles, co-op, ranked, and I have to deal with submarines, and I personally don't like or care for submarines, I'm not going to enjoy it. So much so that, you know, I might just take a break from World of Warships if Wargaming does that. Because I think that could be a serious error on Wargaming's part if they decide to introduce into randoms, co-op, or ranked, or even clan battles for that matter. And Wargaming has not said anything to this. And I hope that they kind of like hear that concern if there's even other players that chime in on that. I'm not sure if it's been said by any other community contributors, but there could be, I'm saying this, but there could be players out there who actually want submarines in random and co-op battles. I don't, because when I started playing World of Warships, there were not submarines in the game. There were not submarines in random and co-op. I like there not being submarines in random and co-op because I know what to expect. I go in, I deal with other surface ships and the carrier player that's sometimes is there, sometimes is not. But I like that interaction. I personally as a player don't want that to change. I want that aspect to stay the same. And that's why I thought it was really cool of Wargaming and how they initially introduced submarines into its own battle mode. So then players who do want to interact with submarines can easily do so in submarine battles. They choose themselves that, hey, I'm going to go and let's division up and let's actually change from randoms to submarine battles because I'd like to play submarines or I want to kill some, right? I think that would be that's great, right? So the players who do want submarines in the game, they win. The players who kind of don't want submarines in the game, they also win because they get to choose whether or not they interact with them. And that's also been something that's been suggested for aircraft carriers, I think, by other players, is keep aircraft carriers in their own game mode. But that, again, is a different topic for a different day. And then my last kind of concern, is World of Warships the place for submarines? I don't have an answer to that question. I'd be interested to hear your guys' response on that, on your thoughts and interaction, because I pay attention to what other players are saying, and I see some players who are excited. They really want submarines in the game. But then I would say more often than not, I see more players negative towards submarines in the game. Inevitably, change is not something that everybody struggles with. But when it comes, to terms of the game, that's why I think it's best, when you keep submarines in its own battle type. Or even like something like the ops, new ops, because submarines wouldn't work very well in the current ops, in my opinion. But introduce some new ops where submarines can be used really well with those different type of tasks that I already discussed. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, and I do think, as the source said, that we will likely see another round of public testing with submarines this coming spring, late spring, early summer, late summer at the latest. Because I could easily see, I would say, in my opinion, could totally be wrong, I don't know what Wargaming's thinking, but I would expect probably that submarines will officially arrive in-game in the fall or early winter. Because I don't see Wargaming testing submarines, and they've already put a lot of resources into it. But taking, I can't even remember when submarines were first introduced into public test servers last year. Was it the summer or something like that? But I don't really see them taking over a year to test something and not introduce it into the game, or longer than need be. So I think we could easily see submarines in World of Warships in the fall or winter. Now, I have nothing against submarines being in World of Warships. I just think Wargaming needs to do it smart, and they need to do it well, and how they go about doing that. Because it could go well, or it could go really bad. And I'll let Wargaming's track record speak for itself. And when I say that, I think you guys know what I mean. Oh my. So, yeah, I just have to see how things end up going with submarines. So it'll be interesting to see how Wargaming carries it out. But I think we'll hear something from Wargaming soon. I would think maybe in another month or two they'll give some sort of public announcement regarding submarines and whatever context that looks like. So if you liked today's topic discussion video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. And if you have already subscribed, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. If it's something that I have said, a question I have posed, or just your general interaction with submarines during the submarine battles, testing, and also the public test server. Granted, submarines are going to look different from then to what they will be in the near future, I'm going to assume. So, until next time, take care.